Welcome back, everyone. Let's go ahead and continue while the other folks are joining. So, on the sprint planning, is there any question? Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. You've
Yeah.
mentioned earlier the sprint zero. Is the first sprint the sprint zero? What is the sprint zero exactly?
There's no sprint zero. If I said that, I misspoke. There's no sprint zero, and that's
Okay.
actually a good question because if you're taking the exam, they're going to be asking that. Okay, because in the practice, a lot of people confuse the preparation stage to start a project with having a sprint zero where you're prepping everything. There's no sprint zero. Okay. So for
Okay.
example, if you just launching a new project, you need to make sure that you allow some time to at least have some user stories written, initial user stories written to populate them into the product backlog. Because initially there's no product backlog item. So you might be asking yourself, how do we end up with anything in the product backlog items anyway before we start the first sprint? Well, you need to have do some prep work before starting to develop the product, and that product is done before the sprint one. But that's not part of the sprint zero. Why? And that's really important because every sprint is made to deliver a product increment, right? So you need to deliver a feature, you need to deliver a piece of the product. So if you're doing a sprint zero for prep work, what's your output? It's not, there's no software that you're going to be producing. It's going to be documentation and all that, right? And that's useless. A sprint is to produce a product increment and to deliver business value. That's the goal of a sprint. If you're doing anything that doesn't get into that definition, then you're not in a sprint. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, and sure, and that's a good
So
question.
just to
Yeah,
can I
yeah.
spring back from that explanation? So the initialization phase and planification phase is definitely outside of the sprint
Hmm.
of this project. So before we actually jump into planning sprints and then getting them and rolling out product, we have a planification initiation where the business logic is defined. Is that correct?
Where the requirements, the user story, initial requirements and user stories are defined. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because it needs to be done somewhere, right? But not during a sprint. Okay, when you start with the sprint and you're taking that train, you just go until the end. It doesn't mean that in the meantime, and I told you guys that in the meantime, you're still having the product backlog item that is changing, is getting reprioritized. Some more stuff are getting added to it because the more we know, the more we add to the or we update the product backlog, right? So that's why I was telling you is an ever changing artifact, and that's also a question that comes in the test. They trick you and ask you, well, okay, so when is the product backlog complete? The answer is never, right? It's going to be changing until you deliver the product and the final product increment. Even so, when you're doing the maintenance and you have the operations running and dealing with any production issues and stuff, you still have that same product that exists, right? And you can have new user stories for created for issues or defects, stuff like that. And that's going to go back to the product backlog artifact, and the application is going to be constantly either refactored, or you're going to have issues fixed, bugs fixed, improvement, and all those things. So that's why the product backlog artifact is ever changing and it's never complete. That's a question very important to remember. That's a question they're going to be asking you on the test as well. Okay. Any other question? Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and I want to complete this before having some quizzes because I think we didn't do a lot of quizzes so far. Okay. So let me go to. We have the sprint planning. I think it's going to take some time. So let's go ahead and do some. Let's do some quiz. Let's see. I think we did this yesterday, right? Let's see. Yeah, we did this yesterday. Let me see. So we used to be simple. Okay, so we did this yesterday. Let's go to this one. All right. Inspection is an important and compulsory component of any Scrum team. Scrum teams inspect every sprint. Which one of the following statements is true? A, the Scrum teams should inspect as many times as they desire. Two. B, the inspection should not be so frequent that inspection gets in the way of the work. C, there should be no more than one sprint per year to prevent overloading the team. Okay, somebody asked questions about UAT before. I think it was Pierre, Jack. Yeah. So the answer of that is what, Pierre, or was it Jack? Who asked the
question about UAT was me.
Yeah.
Jack.
Okay. There we go. Yeah. So what do you think is the answer here?
I think it's A.
Scrum team should inspect as many times as they desire. Are you sure? Yeah.
A or B, because I think that it should not stop the flow of the work, but definitely I think it's not the C.
All right. The answer is B. The inspection should not be so frequent that inspection gets in the way of the work, right? The sprint is not there just for testing, right? You should be testing enough, but at the end, you should be delivering business value. You don't want to have to waste time on doing useless testing if it doesn't bring value to producing the increment and an increment with a high quality. And if it stops you from completing the product increment, right? So the answer is B.
Okay.
Inspection should not be so frequent that the inspection gets, that's the key term, gets in the way of the work. Okay. All right. So next question, which one of the following statement is true? A, Scrum is a process for delivering. Okay, we saw that already. Complex products. Scrum is, we're gonna skip this because we did it yesterday. What type of, we also did this yesterday, right? All right, let me get another one. Let me get another set of questions. Let's see.
You actually did not complete that one yesterday. The one we completed was the one prior.
Yeah, but I'm saying the questions are the same, right? Because I think they had a complexity, what type of projects we were using Agile Scrum with, I think. Let's see, right? Because I think you have that question here. You see, yeah, you have the same, that's the same question. All right, so let's get another one. Let's see. Okay, so Agile is a Scrum framework. True or false? That's easy. Okay, skip this. Which of the following is true? Scrum teams are cross-functional and the Scrum Master organizes them. A. B. Scrum teams are cross-functional and self-organizing. C. Scrum teams are self-organizing and everyone in the team works as an individual focused on their work, on their own tasks only. All right.
It's tricky.
What's the right answer?
I think it's B.
Scrum teams are cross-functional, self-organizing. You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. All right, that's the right answer, obviously, and we saw that many times, right? So does somebody said it was tricky? Does the answer make sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, which of the following is false? A, the dev team can deliver or delivers a complete product in each sprint. B, the dev team delivers a releasable increment each sprint. C, the releasable increment is delivered at the end of the sprint. What's the answer?
C.
Are you sure? You're on mute, Jorgen.
I say it's B.
B. Okay, let's see. A, the dev team delivers a complete
I would say
product.
A, yeah.
What?
The dev team delivers a complete product each sprint. I told you that the goal of a sprint is to deliver a product increment that is releasable. So it means that it's complete and it can be released into production. It doesn't mean that it has to be released, right? But the product has to be complete. It means it brings some value and is releasable, right? It's production ready.
But it asks which one is false.
Oh yeah, you're right. Actually, you're right. Yeah. I got that right. This is the right answer.
Yeah, it asks for which one is false.
This is the right answer. The dev team, so this is true and this is false.
Yeah, the first one is true.
Yeah. I don't think so.
I think we have it wrong. The right answer is actually A. After listening to the explanation, it's false that we deliver a complete product. We deliver a releasable increment after each sprint.
That's correct. That's correct.
Oh, okay.
So the dev team delivers a complete product is not true, because here they're talking about complete in terms of the whole product. But the sprint is to deliver
the whole cycle.
Yeah, not the whole cycle, the whole product, because a product has many components that are worked on every sprint till the end, the completion of the product. So the sprint is not delivering a complete product. Instead, it delivers a product increment. Okay, so yeah, I got that. I got you confused. I apologize. So this is false. This is the right answer. Like deliver a releasable increment each sprint. Okay. All right, so let's try to get some more, because I like those questions. I think it's actually making people speak up a little more, and it challenges you. Okay. All right, let me see if I can get some more. It's interesting to have your point of view and actually discuss all those things. Let me see. We spoke about the core roles yesterday. All right, let's see. Let me get you one for the core roles. All right. All right. The Scrum team consists of number of roles. What are they? A, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Design Team, Tech Team. B, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Development Team. C, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Project Team. What's the right answer?
B.
B, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Dev Team?
Yes.
Okay. Next one, what is the optimal dev team size? Between A, between 5 to 9, B, between 3 to 7, C, between 3 to 9.
Oh God.
C.
Did someone say G?
No, we said C.
C.
All right, 3 to 9. All right, next one. Which role is responsible, among other things, for maximizing the product's value? A, the dev team should be doing this themselves. B, the Scrum Master. C, the Product Owner. A, B, or C? C. So the Product Owner is responsible for maximizing the product value.
I'll say A, because the dev team is actually the team that brings value onto that product, because they're the one developing the product.
You'll be surprised.
The product owner.
Okay, let's check. You'll be surprised. It's actually the Product Owner. The Product Owner is the one who is doing the prioritization to maximize the value of each increment, product increment. So they're the one deciding business-wise, what features should we develop first and release first, right? To maximize the product value. So it's a Product Owner.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think we did. Good job, everyone who answered to those questions. Let me close this and we're going to just go ahead and move on with the lecture. All right, so any questions on the sprint planning? Okay.
Huh?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, too.
Okay. So what are the different, oh, I forgot something. I told you every single event is time boxed, right? So the sprint planning is time boxed to 8 hours for 4 weeks or a month sprint. Okay. So if you do, in other words, if you're doing a sprint for 4 weeks, you shouldn't exceed 8 hours in your sprint planning. If you're doing 2 weeks, you shouldn't exceed 4 hours per in your sprint planning. If you're doing 1 week, even though rarely people are doing 1 week, you should be doing 2 hours. Okay. But normally the from all the experience that I've seen teams most of the time being around 2 weeks, most of the time. So therefore they're using 4 hours maximum for the sprint planning. Again, they don't have to be using the whole 4 hours for a 2 weeks sprint, right? They can do 1 hour and a half and 1 hour and a half. It doesn't have to be straight, or they don't even have to go for the full 4 hours, depending on what they're trying to accomplish. Because the goal is not to stay in the meeting. The goal is to meet, to decide and solve problem and help building a better product increment. That's the goal. So in Scrum, we just don't meet to meet. Every meeting that we having has a purpose. It should help with delivering the product. If it doesn't, then the meeting is useless. So in the sprint planning, we do prioritize, we pick up and we prioritize a selection of the items. We do invite SMEs. I told you before that SMEs can be invited if they're going to providing inputs when we're doing maybe refinement during the sprint planning, or have additional information that the product owner doesn't necessarily have. Okay. The team breaks the items into stories or in subtasks. Okay. So the sprint planning, I told you before, when we're picking up product backlog items and we move them to be worked on the sprint, now you need to do the planning. It consists in using all those user stories and then deciding what are the tasks related to that user stories that need to be accomplished so the user story is completed. Whether it is testing, whether it is developing backend, whether it is reviewing the code, whether it is merging the code into the control version systems like Bitbucket, whatever it is, right? That's part of the planning. Subtasks are given estimates in hours. So usually when they do that breakdown, they do assign a specific time for each task to be performed. And then we can track that in the daily sprint or in the daily stand-up meeting and have everyone working on something and see what's the progress on that. Okay. And then we agree on a velocity, meaning, and I'm going to come back to that in detail. So the velocity of the team is the number of points, story points, and I'm going to tell you what a story point is, or complexity points here. The number of story points that a dev team on average can accomplish during a sprint. And the reason why we're saying on average is because obviously it varies. A team can accomplish 10 points, 80 points, 100 points, but usually it is varying around that average. So maybe if the average of the team is 80, they're going to be doing maybe the sprint 90, and then the next sprint 85, some other sprint 70, and all that, right? And the velocity of that team is the average of number of story points that they achieve during a sprint. And usually some people use the last three, the average of the last three. Some people who are already comfortable and don't have a lot of variations on their the capacity and their velocity, they're using the last sprint as a baseline, right? In other words, if the past 3 sprints you did 75, 85, and then 80, some people are going to average those 3 and say our next sprint, our velocity is going to be 80. And during the planning meeting, they need to pick up user stories that add up to 80 maximum. Okay. Some people are going to say, okay, well, the last sprint we did 85, regardless of the fact that we did the 2 previous sprints, we did 75 and 80. Since we did 85 last sprint, we're going to take that as our velocity. So the number of story points that we're picking up to work on this sprint has to be maximum 85. Okay. Now later on, when I'm going to be showing you the velocity chart, I'm also going to be showing you over commitments, under commitments, meaning the team has been picking up a number of stories that is less than their capacity. Some of the cases they're going to be picking up stories that is over their capacity, because the story points, depending on how you're doing the estimate, is never a fixed number, right? You might pick, there's no half, maybe there's no half points, right? When you sum those up, depending on what you're adding up, it might not be exactly 80. Therefore, you might be led to choose 85 or be a little below 80 because you can't do exactly 80. Okay. So they pick the stories that fits the velocity. That's what it is about. They estimate the stories from the sprint backlog, providing the story points based on the complexity. Okay. So now, when you talk about the sprint planning, we also talk about the sprint backlog. And the real definition of the sprint backlog is what? The selected product backlog items for a specific sprint, plus the plan to deliver it, meaning the organization of those specific tasks that needs to be completed to fulfill those stories, and the assignment, not the assignment, because we don't really assign, and I should say differently, and the volunteering of the team into picking up those tasks and completing them. So the plan to deliver those items selected. And finally, the sprint goal, which is the business value that that sprint has to bring with the product increment. Okay, so that's the sprint backlog. The reason why I'm insisting on that is because it comes a lot of times in the test as well as a tricky question, right? Because a lot of people think the sprint backlog is only the product backlog items selected for that sprint. That's not complete. That's not all. And they're gonna give you many different options. They're gonna be confusing you. So okay, what is the sprint backlog? The sprint number A. Number one, the sprint backlog is all the product backlog items selected to be worked in a sprint. Number two, it is the sprint, all the product backlog items selected to be worked in the sprint plus the plan to deliver them. Number three, all those three, right? And you might be tempted to choose the first option, and that's wrong. That's incorrect. The correct one is the third one, which is the sum of all those. So the number of product, the selected product backlog items, plus the plan to deliver them, plus the sprint goal. That's what is the sprint backlog. Does that make sense? Questions? All right. So the next event that we have, which is a ceremony, is the daily stand-up meeting or the daily scrum or just the stand-up meeting. But most of the time in the industry, people are using the daily stand-up meeting or the stand-up meeting, not really the daily scrum. But that's the term that the Scrum uses in the guide, the daily scrum, okay? And you can see that originally the goal of the daily stand-up meeting was to have people standing up during the meeting, so meeting face-to-face and standing up to be more proactive, right? To do stuff, to work, to talk, to discuss, and to be in a stance where they can communicate and collaborate more effectively, right? To be in action mode, basically. So that's why we call it a daily stand-up meeting. But now, I told you the other day that Agile is fostering face-to-face communication, interaction, because it brings value more than having people working remotely. So if you having people talking to each other directly to solve issues, to discuss plans, they're more productive than if they're remote and everybody's sitting down behind a computer on a camera. Now that we have to do it remotely for the situations that you all know, we have to do stand-ups, on video calls and stuff. So it's not really the purpose of the daily stand-up meeting, because we need to be together in the same room. It needs to be in the same location. It needs to be at the same time, every day to get that habit. Okay. So I'm going to have some points that I'm going to go over. It's really easy to understand. First of all, the time frame of that event is 15 minutes maximum. And again, when we're talking about a time box, it means that it needs to be the maximum amount of time that you need to spend on that event. Okay. It doesn't mean that it has to be 15 minutes on the clock. Okay, so you can do a stand-up, be quick. You do your stand-up is 10 minutes. That's fine. Okay, you can do 12 minutes. If you have maybe 3 developers within the dev team, you can do even 5 minutes, right? But you should never go over 15 minutes. Okay, it has to be something that is quick. So the goal of the daily scrum is to inspect the progress toward the sprint goal. The whole dev is going to attend the stand-up meeting, and only them can talk. The product owner can participate or not, right? The product owner can decide that to participate. If the product owner is attending the daily stand-up meeting, he doesn't really talk. He just listens. Okay. The Scrum Master is facilitating the meeting, but also that's another tricky question. He or she doesn't have to attend either, right? The Scrum Master is there to facilitate meetings, but in the case they don't attend it, they need to make sure that the meeting happens, right? They need to make sure that maybe someone is making sure that it happens in the dev team. But this daily stand-up meeting is mainly for the dev team. But the Scrum Master and the product owner can attend or not. Very important, tricky question. The Scrum Master doesn't have to be present during the daily stand-up meeting. And if he or she is not present, he or she needs to make sure that he or she attends. Okay. One person speaks at a time. Obviously, there's a burn down and sprint backlog that is visible. So we're showing the sprint dashboard usually where everybody is sitting at. I'm going to show that to you later on. Is sitting at in terms of tasks, who completed what. We're tracking all that progress, and then we see if anybody has any impediment, any issues, any blockage. Okay, that the Scrum Master is going to take on to help solving. Okay, or to find the answer. It's not for solving problem. That's why we're telling you that it's only 15 minutes maximum. It's not there to discuss issue. It's there to say if there's any issue and then take those issues offline and try to resolve them. We're not resolving them during the meeting. Otherwise, the meeting is going to be 2 hours. Okay. And some in the practice, there are some meetings, some companies that are when there's a problem that needs to be addressed, but since the time frame of the daily stand-up is only 15 minutes, if someone has a pressing problem that needs to be addressed with the whole team, they call for a parking lot. So they're saying, okay, let's take this discussion or topic to the parking lot. The parking lot is basically usually something that is organized exceptionally after the meeting. So it's a space, it's a time after the daily stand-up where any concerned person from the team can get together to discuss and resolve or attempt to resolve specific problems. Okay. So if someone is taking too long or trying to solve a problem during the daily stand-up meeting, we call for a parking lot. That means that we put in that discussion to be discussed after the daily stand-up meeting in the parking lot. Not in the parking lot where you park your car. It's just an expression. I mean, so that's what we do. We don't discuss that necessarily during the 15 minutes. So for the daily stand-up meeting, there are 3 main questions that we're asking. Number 1, what did you do yesterday? Number 2, what would you do today? And do you have any impediment? Okay, that's really simple. So everyone is going to respond to that question and give an answer. Yesterday, for example, in your case, if you're learning maybe to do the certification, yesterday I learned about the Scrum core roles and this and this and that. Today, I'm going to be learning about the Scrum events, and the impediments that I have is I'm not understanding, some of the core roles that we mentioned yesterday. That's an example. So if our project was to, get to know and pass the Scrum PSM certification, that would be an example of daily stand-up. Matter of fact, what we should do is every day when we get to the class, we should be doing a 15-minute daily stand-up where everyone says what he learned yesterday, what he's planning on learning, or what he wants to learn today, and whether or not there's something that he did not understand. Okay, that would be a stand-up. Okay, so moving on now, the sprint review. Okay, so the sprint review meeting is actually done on the timeline, is done at the end of the sprint, before the sprint retrospective. And this is the opportunity that the product owner now has to provide feedback to the product increment that is being presented, right? That has been built, and ask questions and make changes eventually. And some other stakeholders can attend the meeting, because I told you the product owner is representing the customer or any other stakeholder. So those stakeholders have the opportunity of coming and seeing what the product increment looks like and provide feedbacks as well. Okay. So the goals of the sprint review meetings are inspect the outcome of the sprint, meaning inspect the product increment, what has been built, was it according to the user stories, the way they were written, accept or reject the results. So is anything that was built or developed good to accept and releasable, or is there anything that we need to change? Okay, the decision that it needs to be made by the product owner. The demo, which is the demonstration of what was how the product increment works and what functionalities or features were built. The demo of the sprint increment is done to the key stakeholders, including the product owner. And we discussed the progress toward the product goal. As we say, the product goal is at the end, what is the application or the tool or the software that we're building, the end result, what is it for? That's the product goal, right? And then when you're having a product goal, you also have the sprint goal that explain what is the business value that the product increment created in a specific sprint needs to be delivering. That's the sprint goal. But on a larger scale, the product goal is what is the goal for, or what is the product for? What problem in general is it going to address? Okay, so we discuss also the progress toward that goal. Are we going to the right direction to solve that problem, to fulfill that need or not? The Scrum team and the stakeholders, like I said, are present. And the Scrum team, again, is the dev team, the product owner, and the Scrum Master. The product owner and the stakeholders discuss the backlog. So is there any change to the product backlog items? Is there any change in priority? Are we updating anything? Are we adding anything? Did we add anything? Is there anything that we couldn't complete during the sprint that we need to put back in the sprint back in the product backlog and then pick it up for the next sprint, etc., etc. Okay. And it is time boxed to 4 hours maximum for a month sprint. Okay, so if you're doing a 2 weeks sprint, you need to go not more than 2 hours for your sprint reviews. Okay, questions? All right, and then finally, yes, go ahead.
So who calculate velocity in Scrum?
We're using tools. Okay, usually the Scrum Master is going to be the one presenting those, but there are tools like in Jira. Every time you're aligning, you're picking up stuff for your sprint to put in the sprint backlog, you do have a number of points for each of those product backlog items when they have been estimated, and they need to be estimated before being moved into a sprint, right? And once you move that, it's going to show you, I'm probably going to have time to show that to you at the end. It's going to show you everything that you have in your product backlog in terms of product backlog items, in your sprint backlog, excuse me, in terms of product backlog items. Okay, everything that you selected to be worked in. Let's say you have 5 features, right? 5 user stories, right? And each of them is maybe 5. That's 25 points. So whenever you pick them from the product backlog and you move them to the sprint backlog, the software Jira, which is the software, right, is going to be calculating those for you and tracking those. And there's an option for you to generate a velocity chart. I'm going to show that to you at the end. Okay. And that's where I was talking about the overestimating versus underestimating. Okay. So just to go a little forward, this is what it looks like. Okay. This is the velocity chart. Okay. We're going to come back on that later on, but just to answer your question quickly, the tool or the software that we're using is actually going to do that, and everyone can see it. But the person who reports it or shows it to the team is usually the Scrum Master. But anybody has access to it at any time. Okay, I can access it from Jira because I just need to go to a report option and click on velocity, and I'm going to show a chart that is similar to what I just showed you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. But how do we learn how to use the software Jira?
How do we learn how to use it?
Yeah.
I would say you just learn.
As a Scrum Master, yeah.
I mean, those are things that you're learning you have specific trainings for that. I do that as well.
Okay.
You know, you have specific trainings for that, or some people are
Okay.
learning that on the job, right? It's just like you get to a company, you see, oh, they don't use
Okay.
Jira, they're using version 1, right? And well, you just start learning that. You click in here and
Okay.
there, and then you figure things out. But there are formal trainings for that, and I do that as
Okay.
well. So if you're really interested into that, I can help you with that as well. If that's what you come. Are you already a Scrum Master on the job?
Yes, I am. I am.
Okay. So I can help you.
No.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm interested. Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of the class, reach out to me and let me know what level you are and what is the tools that you're using. I can help you out with that.
Okay.
I've done like I said, version 1, Trello, and Jira. And today I can say 70% of the companies are using Jira. So if you're a Scrum Master, you need to know Jira.
Okay.
Okay.
I have a question about the sprint planning.
Yes.
So you said it's maximum 8 hours, but I'm wondering if it's it could be in many sessions, or
yes,
it has to be.
Yes, it can. That's what I think I said that before. So the 4 hours, like I said, number 1 is the maximum amount of time that you need to spend on the sprint planning. 2, it can be in 2 sessions. I said it.
Okay,
You can have
perfect.
the 1 hour and a half and 1 hour and a half. It doesn't have to be straight 4 hours or straight 3 hours, right? And
Okay.
again, it also doesn't have to be 4 hours, the full 4 hours. And you can break it down whatever is working for your team. It's a decision that the development team is making. How do we want to do our planning meetings? Do we want to have them 1 hour 3 times the same day? So maybe in the morning, in the afternoon, and in the evening. Do we want to have like one full session where we're going to be spending potentially 4 hours straight in the morning or whatever? Well, do we want to have 2 sessions, etc., etc.? So to your point, it can be broken down. It doesn't have to be straight. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Sure. Any other question? All right. So let's try to finish up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question. My question was, what are the requirements for each certification?
What are the requirements to this? Well, is to know the framework.
Yeah, no, the requirement, like, let's say if I want to do like the PMP, do I need like some requirement before you understand what I mean, right? For each certification, do we need to get some requirement before?
Oh, you mean like get some, like, is there any prerequisite? Are you saying like in terms of the level that you need to have before taking the certification?
Yes.
No, you can, if you know the framework well enough, you can just schedule it, sit down and take it. There's no requirements. You don't need to be experienced into Scrum, like 10 years of Scrum. You don't need that. If you know the whatsoever, if you know the process and you can take the exam, you can sit and take it. Okay. All right. Okay, that's it for tonight. Thank you guys for attending today. We're going to continue tomorrow. Okay. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. We're going to address it when we start tomorrow. All right. Take care. Bye.